Hello and thank you for joining us on the first edition of Journalist Hangout this week. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Today on the program, tension as Supreme Court adjourns judgment on Governors Ihedioha, Tambuwal, Ortom and 4 others until Tuesday. SERAP drags 36 governors to court over failure to publish payment details of ex-officials. And later on the show, Benue, Nasarawa Governors urge President Buhari to continue military operations in their states as victims of Plateau killings get mass burial. I'll be hanging out today with Ibemere and Cyril Abaku. Journalist Hangout starts now. Thanks a lot for staying with us. Well, the wait for determination of appeals in respect of elections of 7 governors in Nigeria continues as heightened tension for an outcome. Well, the Supreme Court adjourned until Tuesday this week the hearing of 13 appeals filed in respect of governorship tussles in 7 states. Now, this was after the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Tanko Mohammed, had suspended the hearing of those appeals regarding the elections of governors from Sokoto, Kano, Imo, Bauchi, Plateau, Benue and Adamawa states over rowdiness in court. Well, the panel was expected to resume sitting when a top official of the court announced to the packed courtroom that all the appeals had been adjourned until Tuesday. So it appears we are back to the waiting game. Let me introduce my guests this hour, Ibemere and Cyril Abaku. Good evening.
Thank you.
Let me say compliment of the season. I hope I'm not out of time.
Not at all. My pleasure.
All right, so let's get to the meat of our discussion today, talking about these appeals that have now been postponed till tomorrow. So these governors will know their fate. But for you, what do you make of this waiting game?
Well, you know, when you did intro, you said tension. There's no better way to describe what happened today. Tension in the land, and understandably so, because it could change the permutation of things. At the moment, you have the ruling party, controlling 19 states, I think, and the main opposition party, PDP, controlling 17 states. Now, what that means is that for the cases that we have outstanding, Kano, Sokoto, Imo, Bauchi, Benue, and the rest of them, if you have a slight change, it could alter the power equation. And I think that is why we had a lot of tension in the courts today. For those who have followed the story, we're told at some point the judge, complained that there was, the CJN complained that there was so much noise, and we thought that was that was it. And then they took a break, came back, and we were told, that one of the justices, had taken seriously ill, and I want to quote what I read in the media.
Absolutely.
So we want to believe, give them benefit of doubt that indeed, that one of the justices indeed actually take it. I mean, we're all human. We could break down, but again, that cast a lot of concerns. It caused a lot of concerns for keen watchers of the polity. It was like, why are they marking time on this issue? A lot of people had, come out to, follow what, would happen, So politicians had emptied into the court, the media were all there, and they were all just basically waiting for the ruling. So sometimes you wonder if, all that you see or hear are actually, true. But Tuesday is almost here.
Absolutely.
But like I said, there are indeed concerns, a lot of tension, because it could alter radically, what you have in terms of power equation, in the country, especially for Kano, which is like oftentimes a swing state, huge population. If power changes hand there, it's going to, speak a whole lot about, what will obtain. And I say so because the results are quite close.
All right,
quite close.
Let me put you on a pause now before we even start taking a bite now at each of these states. Now, 2 things, or you've said one thing and stressed again, this issue about the formula or the certain arrangement between the 2 main parties. Let me bring it to Cyril Abaku here now. If indeed it happens that the balance between these two states, APC, PDP, I mean. Now, if it does change now, does it matter? Like some have said.
It does matter. You know, we have had a very long history, Kemi. This is perhaps 40 years now, a very long history of judicial uncertainty when it comes to taking presidential and governorship election matters to the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, if there is any one country that has had to decide such judicial matters by extrajudicial means, quote, we have had a long history of it. Shagari was a beneficiary, Obasanjo was a beneficiary, Yar'Adua was a beneficiary. Controversially speaking, Governors Wike of Rivers State, Governor
His predecessor.
His predecessor, Amechi. Then if you go to, I think, Abia to Ikpeazo, I'm talking about 2015 election matters. Those
Recent.
governors particularly, yes. Who people, maybe because of the tide of public opinion, people generally felt that they were not going to. But the Supreme Court in its wisdom ruled, and there was a lot of uproar. What I'm just saying is that, you know, we have seen where the Supreme Court has told us to our faces that they have had to look at the social implication of a judgment over and above its basic
merits.
Immediate legal merits. We have seen that history. And so it is not a surprise. Now, if you ask me, I would say that to delay justice is not good. It's not good to delay justice, one. Not to say that outright they are delaying justice, but, you know, when justice is delayed, whether by deliberate or indeliberate means, it doesn't quite feel right for the person who feels, you know, he should get justice. That's one. Number two is the fact that our prayers are with the judge, the justice, who
took you.
Who, you know, to quote the CJN, who became seriously sick. We hope that, you know, within 24 hours, he would recover.
Well enough.
Yes, well enough to sit on the panel. Because it is not just enough to get justice done. It is also important for us to see that justice is being done. The amount of, the sheer quantum of tension that has already been generated or raised is not good for anybody. The reality is that when the power, when the texture of power changes, politicians are very optimistic, and people who have a lot of vision, what they will tell you in their ranks is that it gives a sense of insight into what is going to happen in 2023. And so much is at stake. But at least for the now, what do we want? We want justice to be done and to be seen to be done.
All right. Well, that said, I will still bring that question I asked Cyril to you, Sam, now, talking about if indeed the current standing, where we look at what each state has, what each political party, you know, has achieved for itself in terms of numbers now, does it matter if there is a shift? If after Tuesday now and the decisions are given, and of course this is the apex decision that we all know, what happens? Does it really matter to people, or should it just be, let's give us what we voted for eventually?
I think it will matter, and you know why? For politicians, numbers count. Numbers matter a lot. If power changes, okay, and you have, say, 19 the other way, maybe for the opposition, you know, it gives them bragging rights. It does. That's the first thing it confers on them, bragging rights. To say, look, we had always known that we're in control of the polity. You don't want to lose that. And that is why I think that there's a lot of apprehension. You know, so both parties are like, this is our chance.
And what is also striking about, you know, this scenario that we're seeing, this is just a tip of what will probably, you know, happen
ahead of 2023.
This time, 2023, and of course this time tomorrow when the results are given, so to speak. Now, how it seems that, you know, politics just has a stranglehold, so to speak, on the rest of the polity.
So you know, there was a time the APC taunted the PDP.
True.
And said, this country is the one-party state. Your party is atrophying. Your party is dead. And quite frankly, I don't know if we feel the impact of an opposition party now, the way we felt it in the pre-2015 years.
Yeah.
We don't feel it. And the reality is that because our political system is still in its infancy, and I beg to be contradicted, is in its infancy, political parties that have no access to state resources are as good as non-existent. That is the truth. And so for many of them, it is not even about, you know, whether we can sit here and begin to look at it on the basis of should that even be the case in the first place, whereby because you're not in government, you have no power, you have no, as it were. Really, it shouldn't be. But the fact is that, you see, Kemi, when the chips are down, or when push comes to shove, as we like to put it, a party that is not in government, before the next election cycle comes, more than half of the members would have moved away. And the reality is that going to election petition tribunal should be seen as the exception and not the norm. The fact is that somebody who knows how to play smart, particularly our own judicial system, you know, that is not perhaps as strong or as solid as comparatively, you know, to some other countries, because even President Buhari said there was a lot of corruption in the judiciary. You saw when 8 judges were arrested and they were not even put on trial and so on. So the fact is that if our judiciary is what even the president says it is, somebody who didn't get the people's mandate at the polls can now play smart and go and get it under the sound of a gavel.
And do you think that is still going to be the case if indeed, do you see that really playing out?
No, there's a way I react each time we have a matter before the courts. I think it gives us a great opportunity to test our institutions. You know, so when issues go before the courts, I'm like, this is a rare opportunity, because once judgments are passed, you set precedents, meaning that if you have such challenges in the future, you have a lifetime opportunity, I mean, a lifetime chance to deal with it without going through, you know, without going through all the stress that is involved.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Sam, let me put you on hold. I understand we have Godwin joining us from Anambra State. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. Please let's have your contribution.
Delta State.
Godwin from
Hello.
Delta State, you are most welcome.
Yes, on Delta State, please.
Carry on, please.
Please, the man on the brown shirt, the fair man on the brown shirt, Hello?
Yeah.
Carry on, please. Carry on.
The man on the brown shirt, that's why he's a fair man, it's like he's attempting the outcome of the case tomorrow morning. He's saying that if it goes the right way around, the other people will be stronger than the other side. This will give them a chance to manipulate the case tomorrow morning. So you shouldn't be saying that, please.
All right.
I think.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for airing your opinion. All right. Okay. Let me take you back to your initial comments now, where for you, does it appear that, you know, of all these states now that will know their fate tomorrow, is Kano like the biggest of all? Or if we could look at them one by one now, where the stakes are most high, what would it be for you?
You know, initially when I made my entry, I said Kano is quite strategic in terms of numbers. Again, when the caller, you know, spoke, he said we're trying to preempt a lot of things. We're basically trying to analyze, you know, issues here. So we're not preempting. I'm not pro-PDP, neither am I pro-APC. But the truth of the matter basically is that Kano will continue to remain a swing state. It has a huge population. And if you recall the outcome of the elections, PDP was leading when the election first held by over 26,000 votes. And then you had you know, the issue of violence and overvoting and all that. And then we had a rerun. By the time that rerun was conducted, Ganduje emerged the governor by just 8,000 votes. It tells you how close it is. So for those who are from that state, and for the rest of us who are keen observers of the polity, it says a lot about how strategic Kano is to Nigeria's political permutations. That's the truth. So we're not preempting what is going to happen tomorrow, but we're saying that
what's on the ground
what's
already.
on the ground, you know, Kano is like everybody's looking out for it. All right? Everyone, the ruling party, the opposition party, is like, will this swing? Everybody's asking that question. So even the man who is currently in charge as governor is not sitting easy. I can tell you that, because it's so close. Now, we don't want to preempt what the judges would, you know, the judgment they will pass tomorrow. But there are technical issues all over the place. It's just like what, you know, obtains in Sokoto State, where you have such closeness. Okay, after the rerun, Tambuwal won just by a little over 340 votes. It tells you how close it is. So you could just have the thing swing anywhere. So it's not about, you know, preempting anything, but we just want to basically put before, you know, those who are watching this program and the entire nation, that these things are so close, and there could be technical issues. Law is about technicalities.
Law is
I'm not a lawyer,
absolutely.
so anything could happen.
Absolutely, and law is also about seeing as what we have even seen obtaining at the election petition tribunal stages, at the Court of Appeal stage. It's all been, you know, they've harped on how much proof have the petitioners, you know, brought forward now. And in some of these states now, gentlemen, I see that the Court of Appeal also upheld decisions of what obtained at the lower levels. And now somebody was even making an analysis last week that so far the Supreme Court hasn't, you know, invalidated any governor's re-election or election, as the case may be, looking at what obtained last week. And so the Supreme Court is now being, you know, everyone is watching to see whether they will maintain the record of last week or beyond. But for you, what is captivating you the most now? Where do you have your eyes most on looking at this list of states now that are up at the Supreme Court tomorrow?
Well, you know, if you look at the way the voting patterns in places like Bauchi, places like even Kano that went into a rerun, places like even Sokoto and so on, you saw that.
Okay, let me put you on hold, gentlemen. We have Chris from Lagos here. Good evening.
Yeah.
Prince.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening.
Mute the volume of your set, please, so we can hear you better.
Yes, I'm out from there. Right. I'm outside the where television is.
All right. So you're live. Carry on, please.
Okay. I wanted to contribute to the conversation going on the television concerning the governorship election in the Supreme Court. Yes, because the what they are doing there is to waste people's time. And since somebody has won an election and you have won in a lower court and tribunal won in a Supreme Court, I mean in appeal court, they now took it to Supreme Court. And eventually, if the thing was turned upside down, who will finance the re-election?
All right. Well, that's rather valid. Thank you very much, Prince, for that point. All right, Cyril, carry on.
You know, because these are states, and to a fair extent, Benue, these are states where there was a lot of, we had a reasonably lesser degree of voter apathy. Voters were interested in voting, and they wanted to say that their votes counted. It happened in Bauchi, it happened in Sokoto, it happened in Kano, and like I said, to a fair extent, even in Benue, people voted and wanted to see their votes count. And so the people, you know, because this is all about the people, like I said, I find it an anomaly that it has become a norm that the electoral cycle begins from maybe when you register to vote and you eventually vote, and the elections are the results are announced, and then the court, you know, and then you go to court. So we've taken it that the cycle ends at the courts. Because we don't really have a firm system where the cycle ends when the ballot is cast and when the result is announced. The tension we are seeing today is not the tension particularly being generated by the courts by what they cause or what they don't do. The cause are only secondary causes of tension. The actual cause of tension is the weak and, so to say, ineffective elections
processes,
management system that I have in the country. It is not technologically, keeping in step with the times. You look at the level of violence. You look at there's just so much that goes into it, and so once we kick the ball away from the ballot from the ballot box and we kick it to the judiciary, all eyes now fall on the judiciary. That's why the pressure is so high. Now, like you said, Kano is a swing state. Do you remember, Kemi? I was talking about Shagari benefiting from this, the court telling us their own version of the law, and it was Kano that was the problem, because it was debated that Awolowo was defeated Shagari. Kano was the problem. You remember that during Abiola's Hope 93, Bashir Tofa was from Kano State. All eyes were on Kano. Abiola defeated Tofa in Kano. Sometimes some commentators will leave the whole election and say that focus on how Abiola defeated Tofa even in Kano. So there's something, is it so?
There's something about Kano, and we still see the power even now, even in elections in recent times.
Look, even if you had a governor, a certain Governor Ganduje, who says, you know what, I came to serve the people. If I win, let me win. If I don't win, let me also go home. It is beyond. It could even be beyond him. His party, the party interest is there. There are people who are saying, that's Mr. Ganduje, you're not there for yourself alone. That sort of thing.
In fact, I'll try and buttress what you have just said. In the case of Bauchi, Bauchi is one of the states, in question here.
I don't want to keep our next caller waiting. I know I can't get your name. Good evening. Please join the conversation.
All right. Good evening, and good evening to your guests in the studio. My name is Ahiz.
Ahiz.
Yes. I just want to say a few things about the expected judgment from the Supreme Court. When you look at the way election petition cases go in the country, I think your guests should understand this. When you look at the issues, most times these cases are won a lot in the tribunal and the appeal court. When you look at the trend coming from the Supreme Court, not even in this 2019 election, from previous elections before this, you'll find out that the majority of the cases are lost and won in the Court of Appeal or the tribunal. Because most times the Supreme Court looks at, that is not where you go to defend your matters seriously. The defense counsel, the prosecutors, they have their jobs to do in the tribunal and the appeal court. So the Supreme Court, they really have little or nothing to really do about those issues. Is on some few cases, you see the Supreme Court unturn the judgment of the lower court. And on the election of, what was it called? Sokoto State. Honestly, I don't see the Supreme Court unturning that election. Where I have little issues.
Quickly, you want to make that last point? All right. He's now, okay, Aris was making another interesting point now, but then it's been said, let's not preempt, the apex court now. Here. Absolutely. No, listening to what he said now, saying there has been a trend, but at this stage now, it's really too uncertain.
And before I latch on to the point I wanted to make about Bauchi, even when he spoke, he said, except in some cases. So there's that little percentage. And let's not doubt the integrity of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I mean, we have had several cases where the Supreme Court, the apex court of the land, took very far-reaching decision. Even when the lower court and the appeal court had taken it. So we just don't want to rule out anything. I want to continue to, say that every opportunity we have to take issues before the judiciary, it gives us a rare chance, to strengthen our institutions. Yes. And I think for me that is what really matters. So I thought I should make that point. In the case of Bauchi, you were saying something about how political parties can influence, issues. When the results of the Bauchi Guba elections were announced, the former governor, or the then governor, acknowledged, conceded publicly that he lost the elections. it took his party, the APC, to say, no, we won't accept it, even though you have considered, you know, defeat. That we're going to go to court. That's the point he's making.
All right, gentlemen. By this time tomorrow, we will definitely, or should have, know exactly the decisions of this eminent justices of the Supreme Court. But still to come on Journalists Hangout, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project that SERAP drags 36 state governors to court over failure to publish payment details of ex-officials. Stay with us. Right, thank you very much for joining us again on Journalists Hangout. And now to our next discussion, where it seems the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, is ready for war against the Nigerian government. This until it gets what it wants. In its latest salvo, the organization filed a suit against the 36 state governors over life pensions to former officials in their states. Now, this suit was filed at the Federal High Court in Abuja. It comes weeks after the group got an order compelling the Attorney General of the Federation to challenge the various state pension laws. Well, SERAP has urged the court to compel 36 states in the country to publish names and details of the amount paid to former governors, former deputy governors since Nigeria's independence in 1960. Well, the group is concerned that payment of such life pensions amounts to using public funds for private interest of politicians. All right, so SERAP is taking it a step further on this issue. Now, recall the verdict at another federal high court, this time in Lagos, late last year, where the judge, Oguteibo, of course, directed the Attorney General of the Federation to do the needful. But then that alone has generated controversy, gentlemen. Let me come to you now as Cyril. Now, some have even said, does indeed the AGF have that powers? This is a state. States also have their own powers now, and these particular laws were made by the state in line with the concurrent legislative act. What's your take, Cyril?
To the extent that the AG of a state is an appointee of the same system that should be doing the check, I don't expect the AGs to do so much. I think that should be that should simply.
But the AGF, the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, does he have? Can he do that? Of
course he does, but you know he is just one step higher than the other than the AGs of the states. Although he works within the same system, basically, I personally commend SERAP and its director, you know, for taking this bold step. I guess this is what lawyers call public interest law.
Absolutely. Since
Nigeria has decided to paralyze the office of the attorneys, the public defenders, groups like SERAP and other public interest lawyers have risen to the challenge. And I think that this is something that is not just a battle to be fought by SERAP, it is a battle to be fought by every Nigerian. We are supposed to support them and fight this battle together. What I think we are dealing with is not pension for former governors and their deputies. What we don't want is what we call jumbo pensions. If you look at Zamfara State, where Governor Matawale summoned the courage along with his lawmakers, you know, they didn't say that they won't be paying them something at the end of the month. You know, they passed governors and so on. But what they said was that jumbo pay is immoral. If you ask me, jumbo pay, and that is why they don't want to make it public, because the thing has a criminal dimension to it. I don't see how other common pensioners are not even getting pensions. But somebody who served as governor, which is a fine, I mean, which is high office.
Right, it's admirable.
Of course, is honorable to serve, has a pay package that is outrageous. Kemi, do you know that when I was in university, I was just doing a simple personal comparative. I was looking at US public officials, you know, and I realized that American presidents didn't even have pension at the time. It was not until after Harry Truman left office and they saw him as seriously impoverished. So they said, why should a former president be looking like this? Let's find a way, you know, let's create a law that seeks to be giving former presidents a token that they can use to manage themselves. We don't do that here. You know, here it is that we have already seen the future. I don't know how the law in Rivers State was passed in 2002 or 3, I think, when Peter Obi was governor. People were talking and saying, how do you pay former governors this humongous sum? If you ask me, there is nothing wrong with paying them pension when they leave office. Every worker deserves his, his wages. After when you leave office, you should be on some kind of remuneration. But the fact is that jumbo pay should not stand.
And the further clarification is also apt. This alone is controversial, but then the aspect of you being a former governor or a former government official earning pension now from a state and then going on to serve as lawmaker.
Yeah, that indeed is at the heart of the matter.
Absolutely.
You spoke about jumbo pay. I'll give you an example. In the case of Zamfara, former governors are entitled to about 700 million. That's what the records say. 700 million in a year. I mean, how do you defend that? In a society, in a country where there is so much hunger, so much poverty, you can imagine how much that amount will do. Now, we're not saying that a laborer doesn't deserve his wage, but what SERAP is doing here, and I also like to join Cyril to commend them, is that, for goodness sake, you can't earn pension here, whether it is jumbo or otherwise, okay? And then at the National Assembly, for those of them who have served, and that's what SERAP is saying, the plea that they're making before the courts, is like, having served at the state level and now serving as a legislator at the National Assembly, it's not proper that you earn pension both ways. That's what they're saying. And that's why they're asking that names, numbers, and amount of money collected by these people who have served as former chief executives of their state and are now members of the National Assembly should be computed. All right? So at the heart of the matter is what you describe as very serious leakage to the economy. Serious leakage. How do you account for it? We're talking about cost of governance. And then you have just a few individuals amass so much to the detriment of the larger society. So it's a clear case of injustice, if you ask me. And then something has to be done. So for the likes of SERAP that have committed themselves to seeking justice via our judicial system, we can only commend them. But like he said, this is battle for Nigerians. We can't keep quiet.
I was getting to that point.
What things derail?
Because, one would also ask, and it has even been said, that is this a battle for SERAP alone? SERAP is now taking this battle now to involve all governors of the Federation, but then bringing it to each respective state now. What can residents do now, to take this further? Courts may even say that, okay, so what interest does SERAP have particularly? Can you actually say that this system has, affected you personally? So it might be a fight for individuals to take within the states now to question the system. Let me give you an example now. The Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission now says the issue of pension is not within their purview because it's left to each state now to do the. But if you break it down to each of the states now, you've seen that some of these are really controversial. It's not just the pay itself, but then if you look at how it trickles down to the officials, the policemen attached to the governors or deputy governors, as the case may be, how do we just sit down and allow this to continue?
You have one house in Abuja, one house in maybe your home state. The state is going to give it to you. Every month, every year, you have a new set of cars brought to you. They are paying for your driver, paying for a steward, paying for police security.
So it's state by state, depending on your wherewithal.
Then every year there is an opportunity perhaps for you to get medical treatment abroad and so on. Look, like I would say, and again, I know the argument about people who haven't become governors, going to become ministers or senators and they're earning double pay and so on. Sam, I don't know. Let me beg to differ a little bit here.
Okay.
There are certain this is because we see them become governors and senators. How about if the person became a member of a board of a company quietly? I don't know what the law would say about that. But my own take is that if we have a reasonable agreement, what governors and their deputies should be earning when they leave office. If it is going to be 100,000 naira, if it's going to be 1 million naira, if it's going to be 500,000 naira, whatever the amount is, it should even be a sum that enables them to continue to be contributors to social development. Let me give an example. In the United States of America, for instance, after Obama left office, from his vice president, Joe Biden, down to the last cabinet secretary, they're all lecturers in universities. I don't know if they get paid. But you see, in an economy where we realize that the human being, that the human person is the biggest resource for development and for growth, you want to see how people bring their experiences, from different sectors to bear, and they keep going on. So I think that the area I have my biggest worry is that it is jumbo and it is made secret.
Let me bring Cyril. Let me bring Mr. Bob now to this conversation. Good evening. Carry on, please.
Yeah. Good evening, my sister, and good evening to your guest over there.
Good evening.
This issue is a very serious issue. I think I look at it as the highest way of corruption. It's the highest corruption on the land. You understand me? I thought that EFCC, they would have taken it as a mandate on their own side, looking at the level of figure, at the level of money involved in this aspect. I thought that EFCC should have, do the needful. You understand me? Not to be handling all this petty. This is the area we expected them to really demonstrate their right, their authority. This is the area I expected them to demonstrate their authority at EFCC.
All right. Thank you very much.
So I think we need to clear what the man was saying. Sam, you may take the floor.
Okay. We can understand why Bob is so pained. Now, the reason is very clear, in my view. When our politicians aim for power, they're not going for service. That's what I think. Because if it's about service, they will not be driven essentially by what they are taking away in terms of monetary gains. If you take, this is debatable. If you take a look at the entire picture, you find that we seem to have a set of politicians who just go into the fray because of what they can grab. And that is why, for them, it's like an investment. It's like business. Some of them go to the extent of borrowing from banks to run campaigns. And so once they get into power, the first thing they want to do is amass as much as they can, whether legally or otherwise, so that they can pay off the debts they are owing. So we have a value challenge here.
Absolutely. And SERAP itself also harped on that, saying with this suit that is, instituting, there is a need to correct the public impression about what politics mean in Nigeria. Cyril, let me also have your reaction now to this issue, briefly though.
What I would say is that I think SERAP got it very correctly. We must find a way to retool the Nigerian mind and agree on a cap. There must be a national cap at this moment. This is an emergency. It is robbery. EFCC cannot do anything about this because there's a law backing it. If they went into this kind of thing to be extrajudicial, what needs to be done? There should be a national cap on the maximum that each state should be able to pay. The federal government gives states their allowance, their allocations every month. So I think whatever the law says, the National Assembly should find a way to retool the law and make sure that the pension for governors comes under the purview of the Revenue Commission. They should find a way to put a cap.
And not state by
no,
state.
It shouldn't, because clearly they've abused the privilege.
All right, all right. That said, much appreciation. But then let's move on now, where it's said in sports parlance that you do not change a winning team or tactics. And this appears to be the message of Governors Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa and Samuel Ortom of Benue State to President Buhari regarding the fight against insecurity in their states. Well, both men have appealed to the president not to withdraw the military protection, military operation, I should say. It's codenamed Operation Whirlstrokes from the states concerned. At a joint security meeting of the states in Lafia, the Nasarawa state capital, both governors said they have written formally to the authorities concerned to stay action on the withdrawal until security situation in the border communities between the states improve. They're suggesting another 2 years to work on a master plan for lasting peace in the area, arguing that the planned withdrawal of the military operation would spell doom. Meanwhile, the victims in last week's killings in Plateau State have also been given mass burial. That bit alone, a gentleman in Plateau State, gives, fresh cause for worry. Like the governor had said, Governor Lalong, Plateau had been enjoying peace over, in the recent years now, only for this resurgence, so to speak. But looking at the situation now in the middle belt, how does this meet you?
Very sad development indeed. One had thought that the peace that we had enjoyed, for some time now, would have been sustained. What it clearly shows is that we still have, unsettled issues, not just in the middle belt, but across, most parts of the entities that make up this country. But sadly, here we're talking about Plateau. The unconscionable killing of citizens is one that should be condemned, and we would like to pay our condolences. But having said that, it does indicate very clearly that the helmsmen in these states still have a lot of job to do. Same thing, at the federal level, and that's because the federal government, by the constitution of the land, has absolute responsibility, to ensure that lives and properties, are secured. Yeah. So, for our friends, in Plateau, one can only, urge that they continue to seek very lasting solutions, to the challenges that they face internally, and that's why, I would like to commend, the meeting between Ortom and his and the governor of Nasarawa State. The visit in Nasarawa State was more like a return visit, because the Nasarawa governor had visited, Makurdi sometime June or July, last year, and that explains probably why we have, some semblance of peace, within the border communities. And one understands why they're also requesting that the federal government should not, quickly withdraw
the troops there.
The troops in that area. Because in my view, I think a lot has been done. If you do a comparative study of how unstable the policy had been between late last year and now, you could say we've enjoyed some relative peace, and we would like that to be sustained. I think that the consensus initially was that when news emerged that government was withdrawing troops, he needed to make some clarifications. I listened to one of the presidential spokespersons this morning, that's Gabra Shehu, say that it's not that the government has resolved to withdraw these troops, but they intend to do in places where you have peace, where peace has returned to this community. So it's not like a decision to just move them because they just want to move them. I think that clarification seems to have calmed frayed nerves. Yeah. So we hope that the government will continue to deploy its assets and security architecture
where help is needed. But if I understand the tail end of your bits there, Sam, now let me relate your position now with Cyril. if indeed that's what's going to happen now, looking at the states in question, Nasarawa and Benue states now, what's your, analysis of the security situation there with the presence of Operation Wellstroke?
If the people themselves are saying that we want it to continue, ostensibly, one cannot cry more than the bereaved. That is how I would like to open. You look at the challenge in Taraba and Benue. You look at the challenge in Cross River and Ebonyi. I was in Cross River 2 years ago, last year, I can't remember now. And I met with community leaders there. They said, well, since the National Boundary Commission and federal government and other relevant authorities haven't deemed it fit to solve the problem, they have asked that a military base be stationed on the border.
At least to guarantee lives.
As a buffer to guarantee safety of lives and property. And Kemi, please, I don't want to get tired of saying this, that the military cannot be the lasting solution. Lasting solution. There was a time there was a conflict, I think in Benue also, and we called either police spokesman or police commissioner or something, and he said that, look, he couldn't do the interview with us, but he said they have intervened in this thing. They've called community people from both sides to talk to them, and that they won't listen. And so, they've sort of led them to their devices, maybe within that moment when that happened. But the reality is that what we are seeing in Nasarawa and Benue, which I commend wholeheartedly, that the two governors could even come together to have a common understanding and say, look, give us 2 years, we should be able to fine-tune our processes and so on. Last year or 2 years ago, I think last year, Taraba and Benue governors also met in Abuja with Boss Mustafa at the instance of Mr. President to sit down and say, look, work out a solution to the crisis you're having. Border crisis between states in Nigeria is one of the most underreported cause of deaths in this country. I will say it again, that interstate border crisis between states in Nigeria is one of the leading causes of killings, sometimes silent mass killings, people that is underreported. What we are seeing in Nasarawa and Plateau and Benue, Nasarawa and Benue, yeah, I commend the initiative. Both governors, and I commend the initiative. The military has to be there. Even if it is not constitutional, they have to be there, because we have seen it. We have to be pragmatic, we have to be realistic. It will take the presence of soldiers to maintain peace. It's fine in the interim. But what is the lasting solution to these border problems? The one in Benue and Taraba is something you don't even want to go close to.
And that's rather
serious. The one in Ebonyi and Cross River is something that you should not even talk about. One
might even say, or one, observing the situation in the country now, every state, as we see right now in present-day Nigeria, has had one form of challenge or the other in terms of, maintaining law and order. But then what's the capacity of the military, to remain in particular areas like this now, in this present case now, seeing as, there are concerns here and there, they would need, to be deployed to other areas. Of course, for you now, can we afford that, or do we now bring in the recurrent topic of community policing? How strong are they? How wise is this decision? And so on.
I think we should have a wholesome look at it. No doubt, the Nigerian military is so stretched. They're practically on ground, trying to ensure a peace and stability in almost every state. So very stretched, and we don't even have the numbers, not to talk of the equipment. But again, Kemi, the question is, what is the better alternative? Is there a better alternative? Do you want to say, okay, because the military is not constitutionally, structured or designed to manage internal security, so they should go back to the barracks? I mean, he said we need to be very pragmatic here, and I think that's what the government has tried to do over time. And that also explains why the military leadership has said, look, we want to take an under look at our operations nationwide. Let's see where we seem to have some peace, and then move our men from those places. Not to return them to the barrack, but to look at other places where we have challenges. That was what I heard, the presidential, spokesman said this morning. So it's a wholesome thing. So while we have Nigerian military, trying to intervene in some states, the governors, as helmsmen in their own, areas of control, have also come up with initiatives. I mean, Operation Amotekun is Amotekun. Is one that has dominated, national discourse, for a while. Whether it's constitutional here or illegal or whatever, the most important thing to be acknowledged here is that states have this onerous task to ensure that within their areas of jurisdiction, that they're able to ensure that there is peace and stability, because that's the only way you can make progress. So, yes, you have the federal government intervention, but the state governors also have a responsibility as, what do they call them now, the chief security officers of their states. Because at the end of the day, citizens of this respective state are going to be asking their governors, what have you done? Nobody's going to be asking, did you obtain, prior legal, approval before establishing this thing? So, Kemi, my answer to it is that we need to, as a country, to continue to find very practical solutions to these things. Why we build our military, why we also build an empowered Nigerian police, where we also don't have the numbers. We hear that there are plans, on ground to ensure that we recruit about 10,000 or something like that. But we don't know how long that is going to take. But ultimately, we must find varying strategies to deal with these challenges that we face as a country.
All right, well, gentlemen, I don't know if you can spare a few seconds now for your last word.
What I would say is that, this thing has to be also guided by intelligence. If indeed they are certain that there are certain parts where they can withdraw the military, what I think should do is that behind the scenes they should meet with leaders in those places. Let some people also write and say, we feel that there is peace in our community, you can withdraw. There should be this synergy going back and forth. True. But the biggest challenge, like what we have seen in Taraba and Benue, for instance, is the fact that there is the serious fear of the rise of ethnic militia. This matter is multi-layered, but we hope that if there is any such place where peace has significantly returned, the locals themselves should write and say, we have made some gains in creating peace here. We can move the military and you look there for another 6 months to 1 year and see that, And then whatever we see from there, we can also borrow that model and implement it in other areas. I think that will work.
All right, fabulous points now to rest this conversation. Cyril, Abaku and Sam Ibemere, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your sound contributions on the program today. And to our dear watchers, dear audience, that's all on Journalists Hangout today. Join us tomorrow for another episode and watch Journalists Hangout on other platforms showing on the screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Remember, our feedback channel is Journalists Hangout at tvcnews.tv. From all of us here, thank you very much for watching. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.